What's your name, please?
Freddie D'Alessio.
Okay, Freddie, tell me how you're associated with this case.
Well, I'm a personal friend of Walter, and I used to do cyberwork outreach at the same abortion facility where he was arrested. So I know him for a couple of years now.
Okay. Can you tell me some of the details of the case in relation to some of the problems, some of the flaws in the administration of justice here? It sounds to me from talking with different individuals that there were some characterizations going on in administering this ordinance and in the way that the evidence was applied. Could you give me some insight on that?
Well, you've probably given some background about where these buffer zone and bubble zone ordinances became risen to be more prevalent. And that was in the 90s when they passed a law in Colorado. It was Colorado versus Hill. They passed a buffer zone law, and then there was a case called Colorado versus Hill, or Hill versus Colorado. And that went to the state Supreme Court in Colorado, and they upheld it. And then it went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they upheld it. But if you read the oral arguments and the written arguments from the Supreme Court justices, both the state and the federal, they make it very clear what their interpretation of this 8-foot buffer zone entails. And you and I will probably say that it's unconstitutional regardless, and obviously it wasn't a unanimous opinion, so some of the Supreme Court justices didn't think it was constitutional. But it did pass. It got, the number of votes that required to pass it. So aside from the fact that you and I may disagree with the constitutionality of it, the Oakland law has been terribly enforced and misinterpreted, and probably due to the city attorney and the police instructions of how to enforce the law. So the staff may have erroneous opinions about what the law really means. The police may have erroneous opinions. The volunteers, the so-called escorts at the clinic, and the jury, because the judge did not instruct the jury as to what definitions were applicable. For example, the word approach is key here, and he wouldn't give them those instructions. And so briefly, I was talking about approach. The 8-foot buffer zone has to do with physically approaching. That means advancing towards someone. It's not verbally approaching them. It's not handing out something to them, handing literature. It's walking towards them within 8 feet without their prior approval. So if I'm standing perfectly still and you walk right past me within inches, I can offer you literature, I can speak to you, I can hold a sign, and I'm not violating an 8-foot buffer zone. Technically, the buffer zone doesn't exist because I'm not approaching you. So that's what the mistake was here. Walter was never within 8 feet of anyone when he was doing his outreach. So they accused him falsely of breaking that. And so the judge didn't explain to them what actual approach meant. He had to walk with it. It wasn't a matter of just offering somebody literature. It was actually walking towards them within the 8 feet. And also, the video proved that he not only proved that he didn't do that, the judge didn't give the instructions to the jury to tell them, you all have to agree on who the victim is here. He didn't point out any of the victims in the video. He basically said, you 12 people, you pick the victims, and they don't have to be the same victims. They could have picked 12 different victims. So it's very bizarre. I mean, I don't know why the judge did what he did, but it's totally uncalled for.
Is this the first case that's been prosecuted?
This is the first case, the first person arrested under this ordinance. Yeah.
I see. So they're going through their own little learning curve in applying this.
Yeah. But if they did the homework, I mean, this seems very deliberate in the way. Actually, when they were coming up with this law, they were proposing this law. None of us were aware of it. But I am aware after the fact that they had a meeting with the DA or a city attorney, I think it was a DA, and a police captain or a police chief on how to enforce this law. And they were meeting with the persons who proposed the ordinance.
Who proposed it?
Well, the providers of abortion, family planning specialists, probably in union with some of the others. But my suspicion is it would be family planning services were the, the first ones to.
And what procedure was used to bring this into an active ordinance? Did
Well,
it
then
go through the city council?
they invited, I think, at that particular meeting, I'm not positive, but I think there was a city council person involved in that. What's it, Nada or Nadal? It's one of the, okay, so she was the sponsor of the ordinance, so they got her to sponsor the ordinance. And there's a lot of collusion. We all went to the meetings, so many meetings we had to protest, give our opportunity to speak against the ordinance. And we were very clear that nobody was violating any women's rights. We made it clear what we were doing and what we weren't doing. And they basically just lied. I mean, they lied about our behavior. And what's amazing about this, they lied about it in court, and they got away with it, even with a video proving they were lying. So, I don't know. There's some kind of corruption going on, in my opinion, here.
Sure. So there's an agenda that's being pushed through.
They have people on their side.
Now, how does an ordinance become law? How does it become law without going through a vote of the people?
This isn't, I don't know the differences between those kinds of laws, but this is one of those kinds of laws that they can, just make an ordinance in the city based on the council, just voting on the council. And it turned out they were unanimous. And I think there were 9 or 11 members on the council, but it was a unanimous vote. So it became law. And it had a flaw in it, life legal defense, took that, put a stay on it immediately, and they made an adjustment in the language and put it back into place and enforced it. Then they started to enforce it.
Okay.
But the details, I think, have to do with the instructions that the police were given on how to enforce this, and misinterpretation on, whether it's misinterpretation or just outright fraud, I don't know. But these people were making accusations about Walter violating this law when he wasn't.
And you think the case will be retried?
I think the case will probably be retried. I can't say how it couldn't. I mean, when they go to appeal, and I'm not familiar with the appeal process, I don't know what kind of testimony lawyers, Walter's attorneys are able to present, but basically the facts are clear here that the judge did not give the proper instructions to the jury. The DA continued to prosecute Walter, even though the video proved that he didn't violate any of the law. The director of, Jackie Barbick, the director of Family Planning Specialist, was videotaped. I mean, the videotape proved that she was